Hi, and welcome to this lecture on Amazon EFS, Elastic File System. So EFS is a managed NFS, which is a network file system. And because it's a network file system, it can be mounted on many EC2 instances. And these EC2 instances can also be in different availability zones. That's the whole power of EFS. So it's highly available, it's very scalable, it's expensive, it's about 3 times the cost of a GP2 EBS volume. And you pay per use, so you don't have to provision capacity in advance. Let me explain. So you have your EFS file system, and you surround it with a security group. And then you can have EC2 instances, many of them, in the US East 1A availability zone, for example, or EC2 instances in the US East 1B availability zone, or US East 1C availability zones for your EC2 instances. And they can all connect at the same time to the same network file system through EFS. So the use cases of EFS are content management, web serving, data sharing, WordPress. It uses internally the NFS protocol. And to control access to your EFS, you need to set up a security group. Now EFS, it's very important to note that it's only compatible with Linux-based AMI and not Windows. You can enable encryption at rest in your EFS drive using KMS. And it's a standard file system on Linux, so it uses the POSIX system, and it has a standard file API. And the cool thing about EFS is that you don't need to plan the capacity in advance. The file system will scale automatically, and it's pay-per-use for each gigabyte of data you use in EFS. Now, let's talk about the performance of EFS because these can come up at the exam. So the scale is that, first of all, you can get thousands of concurrent NFS clients and 10 gigabytes per second of throughput. You can grow to a petabyte scale network file system automatically without provisioning capacity in advance. Now you can set different performance modes for EFS at the creation time of your file system. The first one is general purpose. It's a default and it's for latency sensitive use cases, so think about web server, CMS, etc. But if you want to maximize the I/O, you can use the max I/O one. It gives you a higher latency, higher throughput, and it's highly parallel. So this is more when you have big data or media processing type of need for your file system. The next one is around throughput mode. So by default, you have the bursting mode, which is that 1 terabyte gives you about 15 megabytes per second of data transfer speed plus a burst up to 100 megabytes per second. But then you can set up as well provision, because with bursting, the more space you're using, the more bursting capacity you get and throughput you get. But with provisioned, you can set the throughput regardless of your storage size. So for example, you could have a 1 terabyte storage on your EFS and decide to provision a 1 gigabyte per second speed for your EFS network file system. Now for storage classes, again, multiple options. So you can set up storage tiers, and it's a feature to move files to a different tier after a few days. So for example, the standard tier is for frequently accessed files, and there is the infrequent access tier, the EFS-IA, which is going to give you a cost to retrieve files if you do ever retrieve them. But when you store these files on EFS-IA, you are paying a lower price. And to enable EFS-IA, you must use a lifecycle policy. So let's assume we have some frequently used files on EFS standard, but then one of these files is not accessed for more than 60 days. Then because of the lifecycle policy we set up together, the file is going to be moved to EFS-IA in a different tier, and it's going to give us a lower cost. Now in terms of availability and durability, you have 2 options. You can set up EFS to be multi-AZ, which is great for production use cases, because if an availability zone is down, then it will not affect your EFS file system. But if you want for development to have a 1 zone EFS file system, you can. So it's great for development, but it's only in 1 AZ. And backup are enabled by default, and it's still compatible with the infrequent access storage tier. So it's called the EFS 1 zone IA, and that gives you the more aggressive discount, which is about 90% in cost saving if you use that. So the exam will ask you, when should you use EFS, and then what options should you set on your EFS network file system to ensure that you validate and comply with the requirements. Okay, that's it for this lecture. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.